Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragongate is how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragongate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So far. Fast to freedom. Stars tonight together. Here we'll be on the stage. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for January 23rd, 2024. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed on wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the red box to sponsor this podcast, and you can set up a one-time or reoccurring donation, no obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside, as always, Case Lowe. And Case, just getting right into it, I feel like the last essentially 5 days in wrestling have felt like a year. And it's been a while since we've talked too about the wrestling world. So how are you doing, man? It's been a while.
I'm good. You're right. We fell into a weird scheduling thing where we wanted to talk about Corkin right after it happened, but then there was nothing, last week, and then the two shows this week. So no, the wrestling world as we know it is entirely different than it was the last time that we spoke, which is always an interesting predicament to be in, even if it doesn't directly affect Dragongate. I think it's worth noting that Kazuchika Okada has left New Japan Pro Wrestling. I don't know if you've heard or not. And boy, what an interesting,
let's just talk about that.
What an interesting scenario we're in now.
Yeah, so he is technically a member of the Dragon system.
Heyo.
Yeah. I mean, he is the last great student of Ultimo Dragon. That's the way that he has been called. But Kazuchika Okada has announced that after January 31st, which is the thing that drove me nuts about everything over the last few months about this case, was you and I, when we hear January 31st as it relates to the contract calendar, we already know what day that is. But the fact that Fightful and whatever just made a big deal out of it just drove me nuts. But on the 31st,
no comments.
On the 31st of January, Kazuchika Okada's contract with New Japan Pro Wrestling will lapse. He has already announced his intention not to renew. It seems like they've completely broken off negotiations. And if you've read some of Okada's interviews since this announcement, does not seem like that he's really thinking that there's going to be a 13th hour deal. It's heavily insinuated and outright reported by Tokyo Sports that he has one of two landing sites, either WWE, now flush with that Reed Hastings Netflix money, or AEW. Case, this is all wild.
It's insane. I have a very bad track record of just assuming that Japanese superstars will never leave their home promotion. And this goes back now a full decade that I've been in this game. When the Kenta rumors, Kenta to WWE started, I told people, I was like, you guys are absolutely insane. Kenta is not leaving Noah. He might go to New Japan, but there's zero chance Kenta leaves Japan. And then Kenta left. And then I think the next one was Nakamura.
2016.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Nakamura's not going anywhere. He's the third biggest star in New Japan. Everybody relax. And then Nakamura left. And then I was in denial about Tozawa until he left. And, the Okada thing was very much the same thing where I thought, there's no way this guy's leaving. He got an agent to milk New Japan for as much money as he possibly can. Good for him. He's one of the 15 greatest wrestlers ever. He deserves every penny he can get. And, we'll see him in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom next year. And I was once again, I'm right about a lot of things. I am wrong on this 100% of the time.
Yeah, kind of the wild thing I feel like as it pertains to us, it was very clear within the Japanese wrestling ecosystem and industry from everyone we talked to, and just if you're someone who has like a cursory interest on like international just affairs, the status of Japan's monetary policy is something that's very big. Japan, for those who are like the whole hashtag the yen is weak case, talking with people in Japan and around, what's the number one thing that everyone brings up when you talk about the wrestling industry in Japan?
No wrestling company has any money, even the corporately backed ones.
Because
of COVID, because they had 3 years of no or limited live attendance gates, and they don't have built-in streaming and TV revenue the way that North American wrestling promotions do.
And when you add all of that up with the fact that I haven't checked today what the yen to US dollar exchange rate is, but it is something where so at this time it is about 145, so it's a little better, but by and large, but that's as of right now, when all these things kind of add up together, it presents itself to someone that I think that we all kind of get up in our feelings a little bit about Okada. But why should Okada, like at this point, have that allegiance to New Japan? New Japan is not his home promotion. Like he does not like technically have like a promotion he was born and bred from. So
it's different than Tanahashi.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can talk about this on the most micro of micro scales, and that I just ordered a huge order of Japanese wrestling magazines, which I haven't done in a few years because the yen is so low right now that I was like, well, this is going to be, what, $30 or $40 cheaper, maybe not that extreme, but it's going to be way cheaper than it would have been 2 or 3 years ago had I made the same order. And Mike, I missed your stream on Friday. I don't know if you read the note that I sent you from somebody okay.
But I feel like we should talk about it here too, because it's worth getting into, and I want your insight about it.
Yeah, please just refresh for anybody that may have missed that.
So if you are a subscriber of Spears Ovations, you've heard me go about 45 minutes about this, but it is something where speaking with people within wrestling, especially within Japan, there's 3 or 4 big points that I feel like we should make. First and foremost, what we need to say is what the English speaking and greatly North American response and attitude towards WWE amongst wrestling fans is not the way that it's viewed outside, more by and large. Like, we have to say that first and foremost, just get that out there. But looking at this, if the big thing that where it boils down to, and speaking with this person, is that if you make your living in yen, but everything kind of comes down to dollars right now, you take what, like, a nice flat number that Okada is making, and you make it the exact same, like, let's just say it's the equivalent of $1 million or whatever. And however you look at it, when you get paid in dollars case and you convert it back to yen, you automatically get like a huge pay increase. And that is something that New Japan and any company in Japan can't compete with right now. And it's that case, not just in the United States, it's working in Europe and it's working in Mexico as well.
Yeah, no, it's really bad news for anybody that is making a living purely off the yen, but also might have to factor in dollars and cents USD into it. It's just a very bad deal right now. And, in the Dragongate sense, I mean, there's a reason when Kiyomiya and Alejandro were announced for Final Gate that I immediately went to somebody within Dragongate and was trying to figure out what the deal was there, because all of the Dragongate Noah stuff in 2022 that raised so many eyebrows for so many different reasons, like we reported on the show, Noah was paying for talent both ways there. And for Dragongate, they looked at it as a way to try to get some cash flow. Now, the difference is this time around, it is thought of as a make good for Yoshioka doing the N1 that Alejandro and Kiyomiya are there. But, it doesn't matter if it's New Japan with the Bushiroad backing or the cyber agent groups or Dragongate, who's purely an independent. And it's why you see the Lek Corporation involved in Dragongate as much as they are. There's just no money there. Forget the years and years now of COVID attendance. We're now living in a reality where 1,500 fans is the sellout for Korakuen Hall, and that is a state of the industry, but also, it wasn't that long ago where if a company did 1,500 in Korakuen, you go, 1,800's a sellout. What are you guys doing?
Right. It's been decreased by 16%, like just off the top. And it is something where I think when you like look at how compensation works also and hierarchical systems, Okada is someone they already broke the mold with a long time ago. Like, it is something where you can only bend it so much before it just becomes like an absolute vanity farce for it. And for basically Bushiroad, from what it seems like, especially from outside of Bushiroad, what it would have taken to, I guess, be commiserate with the American companies would have just completely almost broken the division.
Yeah, I think that's well said.
But and something also worth stating, I mean, talking with the people around the industry, he's only 36. He started wrestling at the precarious age of 15, but he's 36 with 20 years in the business. Him and his wife just have a newborn baby, and something that's a big factor with these kind of things, and I know that it's happened within people and around the Dragon system, is just dealing with like having a family internationally. And it could very well be something where, the way I look at it, Case, this is Okada's big opportunity to make generational wealth, like true generational wealth, just from like converting it back and forth. This is like the prime earning years, and especially like with how everything is within WWE and within AEW, they're the ones that can offer it. And at a certain point with this newborn child, you don't necessarily have to make the decisions of, oh, if I'm working in the United States, are we going to raise the family in the United States, or are we going to raise in Japan? We're going to do, I live in America, my family lives in Japan. Like, there's a lot of considerations to be made that, like, it's a unique window. I feel like that. I think it's kind of unique to Okada by himself in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, when Tozawa signed and his family was over in Japan, he went back and forth all the time. And, God willing, Okada signs with AEW and all of this. I mean, I would be so devastated if it went the opposite way. And I think I fall.
And I'm kind of expect it to go the bad way too.
God, it just, and look, I think I share the thought process of a lot of people, which is I'm not dying to see him full time in AEW. I really wish he would have stayed put. I liked him.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I thought the last year of Okada's career was super interesting because, as Jesse Collins and I talked about on Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, Okada's first half of 2023 was so loaded with big shows and big matches and great matches that his second half, and I'll put this in air quotes, fall off, made people kind of forget how dominant he was in the first half of the year. But the second half of the year, when he was doing the trio stuff, I was like, oh, this is great. This is different Okada. We haven't seen this. We haven't seen him and Tanahashi and Ishii have trios matches before. I really like this sort of stuff. But, especially with the AEW schedule, just God willing, he goes there. It's not impossible to raise a family in two different continents with in this time and place. It's just not. So it's a shocking move. It's one I didn't see coming. And I would like to briefly gloss over the Young Dragons Cup 2005, which Okada won, unless you have any other thoughts.
Yeah, I guess like that. My big overall take about this is there is certain things about this that it's very clear, like Bushiroad is a very big company, but you can't really, like, you're swimming upstream at a certain point. But I still, that there is a giant question about like he's coming off at an end of a long-term contract deal. At the top of every booking meeting I would have had for the last year, this is the exact day that Kazuchika Okada's contract expires. Are we going to re-sign? Why are we going to do that? And maybe that, if we want to talk about that fallout that he supposedly had, maybe that's where I feel a little bit of angst. But it's not even really that he, quote unquote, fell off, I feel like.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, he was one of the best wrestlers in the world last year. You know, he doesn't miss. And the Danielson match at the Dome, which I think I liked more than most people. I mean, I was very close to giving it 5 stars. It's just, you know, the whole thing was absolutely brilliant. So I'm gonna really miss him in New Japan. And I think it was Joe Gagne that made this point. I'm gonna credit it to him because he's a smart guy. I like him. But the Okada thing is really gonna sink in with the G1 announcements, because for, you know, in the modern era of the G1, a decade now, you can look at that schedule and go, oh, here's what Okada's doing in Cork, and oh, here's what they've got him doing in Osaka. Oh, here's what he's doing on August 8th, you know, that big show. And to not have that in the G1 specifically, I think is going to hurt a little bit. I'm going to really miss that.
Yeah, and that's like the little part of it that I'm like, couldn't have done a joint thing where no one is really dying to, and no one thinks the best use of Kazuchika Okada is having him on Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage at each and every week. You couldn't have done something where 2 weekends of the month you're doing AEW and the rest of it you're on tour with New Japan. You know, like that's the thing that I kind of come down to, because that would have solved the G1 problem.
Yeah, and it seems like Ospreay, there's like G1 potential for him on the table. The way the Okada thing's going, I think it's going to be a hard split. Yeah, for the time being.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So, Young Dragons Cup 2005. I mean, all of the greats were here in this one.
All the stars.
Tournament. December 10th, 2005. Case.
Yeah, well, a night that will live in infamy, if you will. And you know, for those that don't know, so this is the Toryumon Mexico. This is their El Numero Uno. This is their King of Gate. This was what they always did to decide basically who the best wrestler in the class was. So, you know, Magnum won in 97, Horiguchi won in 98, Kondo won in 99, and Milano Collection AT won in 2000. Taiji Ishimori, that footage is on the network. Taiji Ishimori won in 2002. 2003 was Takeshi Minamino, Rocky Romero in 2004, and then Kazuchika Okada in 2005. This lineup features names not only like Okada, but like Hajime Ohara, Boo, and Passion Hasegawa, great name, and Banana Singa, great name. The thing that I am taken aback by, and I have not seen any of this, I don't think, because Okada debuted against Negro Navarra, that's out there. But I feel like of this era of his career, the most famous thing that's out there is like Ultimo and Okada versus TJ Perkins and Jushin Liger, or I think they did something with the Motor City Machine Guns, maybe?
Yeah, most of the footage from Toryumon or UDO6, which was what this era of Toryumon was called, out there of Okada was when him and Ultimo toured the Northeast in Canada in 2007.
Because this is what I'm trying to think is like, so we have Toryumon X footage when they were in Toryumon Mexico because it aired on Toryumon TV, but by this point, there wasn't Japanese TV for this to be put on. So if anybody has this footage, I would like to see it, not for the finals of Okada versus Ohara, but I'm sure there's a clipped version somewhere out there. Semifinal match. This is the one other name that I didn't mention that's worth mentioning. Semifinals, Kazuchika Okada versus Fujita Hayato.
Yeah, that's right. He pretty much went straight to Mexico after his debut.
God, what a match. That's crazy. That is, I would really like to see that.
Yeah, it's something where I know that I don't think it was like a full on like samurai block. Ultimo, I thought, had like a TV deal for a little bit. Like, because there was some releases of UDO6 stuff, I felt like at one time. Like,
okay,
it's not
so maybe, well, yeah, I mean, that would make sense because I think the Negro Navarro match is on Samurai TV. I think it's
right.
So, you know, I think it has Japanese commentary. So if this is out there, if anybody has this, please shoot me a DM. I'd really like to see that. Main event, Dr. Wagner Jr., Mystico, and Ultimo Dragon defeat Atlantis, Kenzo Suzuki, and Scorpio Jr. via DQ.
Was this a Dragon Mania show that this Young Dragons Cup was on?
It's just considered a Young Dragons Cup show. They would always give that top billing, but it's just a Toryumon Mexico show.
My brother got me a Toryumon Mexico post-split Dragon Mania t-shirt that
Nice.
I think might be this year, because on the front of the shirt does have Ultimo Guerrero and Mystico on it in cartoon form.
I am right now trying to not rewatch, but watch for the first time a lot of mid-2000s CMLL, because I'm trying to understand Mystico more just throughout his entire career. So I've been watching a lot of that stuff. I've been watching his matches with Black Warrior, which have been really, really entertaining. And then I was reading old Observers last night, and I was reading about when he signed in 2011 with WWE, and I ran across this is Dragongate related. That's why I bring it up. And I found the quote here. This is from one of the Observers in 2011. I don't have the date on it, but Court Bauer was explaining to Meltzer his idea for what turned into the minis division in 2005 and 2006. And Bauer said, and this is a quote of the Observer, the key names on the original list included Milano Collection AT, Milanito Collection AT, Mystico, who would have been a Tiger Mask-like character to build the division around, Brazo de Plata for comedy, and he was the only one that they hired, Taiji Ishimori, Dragon Kid, Sanjay Dutt, Jody Fleisch, Jack Evans, Teddy Hart, and some of Hart's students. That is what Court Bauer wanted to bring to WWE TV in 2006.
Yeah, Court, he's had a lot of ideas over the years, and he finally got a Dragon System guys eventually.
That's the most interesting thing. When you look at how many times Court tried to book Toryumon or Dragongate guys before he finally did, because in 2003, they were supposed to work with Toryumon, and then they ran out of money and closed down. And then Court tried to get them in to New York in 2006, and it didn't work out. And then in 2020, they announced their MLW partnership with Dragongate. And then COVID happens. And then the legacy of the MLW Dragongate relationship is SP Kento versus Davey Richards and Shun Skywalker becoming their middleweight champion.
Yep, just as planned.
Yeah, well, it holds up great historically.
I mean, it is something where I am really excited about Mochizuki Jr. going to Europe, because I want to see what random title he might end up with.
God, I hope a lot of that stuff makes tape. I will say I'm going to watch WXW for the first time in 5 years, I would think. I don't know the last 16 Carat that I watched, but I know that was the last time I watched WXW when he's there. I'm obviously so incredibly excited for everything he has going on.
Yeah, and unless you have anything else, but should we get into this weekend's shows?
Yeah, so we're gonna talk a little Kobe Sambo Hall here, the doubleheader they did over the weekend. We'll do our big Gate of Bayside preview, because that show is Saturday, and then just a quick note for the listeners: we'll be back next Tuesday with a Gate of Bayside review, and then we will also have audio. A bonus episode next week as well, a new start to the Rewind and Rewatch series that we'll be doing as a part of Dragongate 25 this year.
Yeah, it is wild how everything's kind of happening.
It's all happening.
It is, as Sheena Shea said, it's all happening, Case. Well, it all happened in Kobe Sambo Hall this last weekend, returning to the friendly confines for a 2-day doubleheader. I think the way we're going to cover this is we're going to talk about what worked and what didn't work. It's been a kind of interesting few weeks, I feel like, in the company. It feels like that we had the first half of Open the New Year Gate ending with that Korakuen doubleheader, and then it kind of went dark again. And now we're starting right back again with another edition of Open the New Year Gate. Because it did that kind of have the overall feeling of oh, we're restarting 2024 again to you? Because it did with me.
Well, I mean, the first show, it looked like everybody was wrestling at gunpoint. Like, nobody wanted to be there. Nobody was excited. So it was a hard reset in a bad direction. And then the second show, you're right. It felt entirely disconnected from the Korakuen shows, but that wasn't necessarily a bad thing.
Right. So let's get into what really worked coming out of Kobe Sambo Hall. And I think first and foremost, the person that I would say across both nights, like if we were averaging the performances, he put in the shift on the first night, he put it in on the second night. Ryoya Tanaka case. I have been really excited about this guy. And he has a match against Mante and Daiki Yanagiuchi to open up Kobe Sambo Hall. He is also on the second night's shows. I was really... each time I see Ryoya Tanaka, and I feel like I do this each time, he puts his best foot forward. It's the only thing this guy's capable of. On the second night, a strong match against the Kung Fu Masters with Daya.
He's just a winner. You know, I'm just starting to feel that way about him, where I really trust that, barring a catastrophic injury, which is always possible, saw it with Tien Revolucion, Mochizuki Jr., a little bit injury prone. I'm very worried about Kaito Nagano and his neck after some things that I heard this morning. It's very hard to push all your chips into the center of the table with a Dragongate rookie right now just because of the injury bug that's gone around. But Tanaka is just one of those guys that makes sense. You know, he fits this promotion. He looks this promotion. He wrestles like he should be a champion in this promotion. And, you know, I thought he was great. He was the highlight of both shows, the Decourage Diane Tanaka versus Daiki and Mante match that opened up the January 20th Sambo Hall show. I mean, to me, it was the opener and the closer that were even worth discussing, really, for the most part. And his chemistry with Mante really jumped out at me as something that's quite special. And then to me, the match of the weekend was Kamei and Jason on the second night versus Diane Tanaka again.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how this Kobe Sambo Hall opener went with. Like, I mean, you had Daiki and Tanaka face off opening up there. And we throw all the roses on Tanaka. Daiki had a really good performance here. And especially as it pertained to, we got like veteran Dragon Daya, like grabbing a hold, and like it was something that was just a little bit of enough of an inversion of what we usually see out of him that I really enjoyed, and you know, finished with a pretty stiff brainbuster. But it is something where Tanaka really has every opportunity he has given. He has really taken it, and I do think I liked Big Hug versus Doin Kage on night 2 a little bit more than Kung Fu Masters and Dai and Tanaka, but it is something where Dai and Tanaka were, just because of the performances we were getting out at Tanaka, were easily across both nights the best guys on each show.
I'm glad you said that about Daiki, because I think it's very true. You know, he worked an exhibition at the January Korakuen Hall show last year and then debuted officially in March. So we've had him around for about a year now, and his entrance into the company was just very different than Tanaka's. We all had Tanaka circled and earmarked, and we're watching with bated breath every time he stepped in the ring just to see what he was going to do. I think everybody realized, just from presentation alone, you know, Daiki's going to be a bit of a long-term project, but he's turned a corner to some degree, and I'm ready to see what's next. You know, it doesn't mean that he has to abandon his background of being a Korakuen Hall employee, but I'm ready for the next step, and I kind of want to throw it to you real quick. You know, the unit landscape is far from perfect right now. Talk a lot about that when we get to Gate of Bayside, but if you had to put him in a unit tomorrow, where would you slide him into?
You see, like, I've really grown over this month to have an affinity for Daiki. I love the Gooch.
I'm very into him as well. I'm glad we're on the same page there.
He might be my guy out of like the everything around him and out of this class, but I feel like, weirdly enough, just because they're just like the kind of energy that works for it, but I don't know if it would work full time. I kind of want to see him in gold class, because I feel like him and Benkei, like, there's a certain kind of like jocular energy around gold class where they come out and you're just like, oh, look at these dipshits, that I feel like Daiki would really work in on, and they desperately need members.
Yeah, they do. I'm going to talk a lot about Big Hug later. I don't want him as the third guy in Big Hug. I want him as the fourth or the fifth guy, quite honestly. But if they're going to add to that unit, I think he has to be involved. And I really think there's potential for some Mante Hyo Daiki trios matches that could be really special.
Yeah, it's something where it takes a second to wrap your head around Daiki Yanagiuchi, but it is not very hard to see how he works in this company and what his role is. And
it's in the same way that Tanaka we can project to main events, you can see 10 years into the future and see, a hotly contested Daiki Bravegate match very easily. Yeah, he fits into the spirit of this promotion in a really beautiful way.
No, absolutely so. So it is something where you walk away from this weekend, your unmitigated high point has to be Ryoya Tanaka. Daiki Yanagiuchi gets the honorable mention here. We talked a little bit about their opponents on the 21st, but on night one, let's talk about something that did not work and where we say that the first night was real tough. And Kung Fu Masters lose to Ishin and Yoshiki Kato on night one case. Not really something that I would do in the lead up to them. I mean, they're facing Kaito Kiyomiya this weekend. I would not really have my Twin Gate challengers drop falls against rookies, but that's where we were here. Easy thumbs down moment of the weekend.
Yeah, no, this was when I knew we were in trouble, is that on that second show, we have this just lame duck Ishin and Kato versus Kamei and Lee match, 10 minutes, 4 guys that I really, really enjoy watching, and the match just felt very uninspired. I think they all just had an off night, and then the finish I thought was just completely ridiculous. I have no idea on earth. I understand they're Dragongate champions, but what is a Torbolino from Kamei to Ishin? What does that hurt Z-Brats? I just do not understand why Kamei and Lee, who should be rolling into this Twin Gate match, why they took a loss there. Because I don't think, and not to get ahead of myself, but I don't think they're beating Kiyomiya and Alejandro. And even if they do, again, you have Dragongate champions there in Ishin and Kato. So the whole thing was just as that show unfolded and got worse and worse and worse, I was very upset about that finish.
Yeah, and it's part of the situation of at least the card makeup where they did not have either Shun Skywalker or Madoka Kakuta this week. They were at British Kingdom Pro Wrestling, though. You really you end up having to book things in ways where I would have rather put all 4 of these guys in the Royal Sambo and just have them have a strong performance in the Royal Sambo and walk away than have your Twin Gate challengers take an unneeded loss this far out.
Well, it's tough because, if the match kicks ass, then I'm not going to say what I'm about to say, but the match was unnecessary. Right. There's a million different Kobe shows you can do this exact match on. I don't know why it needed to be here, and I don't know why the finish needed to be what it was.
Absolutely. But let's talk about something that absolutely did work, getting away from the bad taste from Saturday. On Sunday, returning from intermission, we knew that he was around because he was doing wrestling commentating on the show, but we had a impromptu exhibition match, Sachi Hokoboy versus the returning Mochizuki Jr. And as I have said for the last year, Mochizuki Jr. returns and he does not take a step wrong.
No, as I've said before, I think for the people that cover Japanese wrestling, I think the biggest miss right now is not talking consistently about how good he is as somebody 18 months into his career. And, as we talked about, last episode, there are 4 or 5 months there that he's been out due to injury. So you're talking about just over 12 months of actual wrestling. And he has it figured out on a level that should terrify people. He is on a path to being one of the best wrestlers in the world. I had him, I think, in the SFM 50 as my 30th best wrestler in the world. That was primarily based on his Rey de Parejas work that he did with his father a year ago, coming up in February. It doesn't look like we're getting Rey de Parejas again this year, which is such a bummer. But no, Junior comes back, and it's immediate energy, it's immediate charisma, it's immediate purpose. And, if you looked at the Voices of Wrestling Discord over the weekend of the Dragongate channel, I was complaining about the show on Saturday and how lifeless it was. And there was an ongoing discussion there. It took a few different avenues of, just why are they having these shows where it doesn't feel like anybody is excited to be there. Anybody's wrestling with a purpose. Junior comes out 5-minute exhibition match. This man is wrestling with a purpose. It's just so great to see.
And it's something where he's had, and it's not that I think he's been snake bitten in a way, because he's been able to persevere through it. Like, he has taken a bunch of things for he's coming up on 2 years in wrestling, but he doesn't lose the swagger. He comes out, you see him kind of moving around, and he immediately hits his finger gun pose. I'm like, oh, Junior's back. And then he proceeds to beat the living shit out of Sachi Okaboy for 5 minutes. I was surprised how much this exhibition did not need Junior to rock Sachi that way whatsoever, but he did. And then he proceeded to get his nose busted open in the post-match stuff in the next match too. So the kids still got it.
Yeah, the match that followed, I'm glad you mentioned that. So that was M3K, Mochi Susumu Kana, the old man crew, against Fuji, Dragon Kid, and Yamato. And the highlight of the match is Yamato and Junior running a full sprint chase spot outside the ring. I mean, both men booking it at one point. And it was great to see, M3K
and then
going away is
Yamato
really going to
slipped
suck.
and fell. Yeah, Yamato slipped and fell, and everyone went like, "Oh, is he okay?"
That would be just Dragongate's luck, as they're doing a comedy chase spot, and Yamato breaks his ankle and is out the entire year. That would fit the theme of this promotion right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I didn't mean to completely side rail you there.
No, I'd say it's just great to have Junior back. M3K going away, I think, is really going to suck. We'll get the match at Gate of Bayside on Saturday, and then we'll get their farewell in Cork and Hall. But I was so surprised when we did the award show a few weeks ago that you also thought they were the best unit of 2023. And it came to light even in the aforementioned trios match there with Yamato and Fuji and Dragon Kid, where, if you remember when this unit first formed in the summer of 2022, when Junior wasn't around, it was a real bummer because Susumu was coming off of the Dreamgate match versus Kai, where he left Natural Vibes. And Susumu, the last half of 2022 was maybe as de-emphasized as he's ever been in the booking. In Kanda in 2022 was Yasushi Kanda, wasn't the most exciting thing to see. And then you would just have Mochizuki there not really doing anything important. So when they didn't have Junior, it was three old guys playing dress up and trying to relive their glory years. And it just didn't feel right. Mainly because of I won't even say resurgence, but just the surge of Yasushi Kanda in 2023. This unit figured it out. And they were really able to be interesting whether Junior was healthy or whether he was injured. The old man trio really started working and really started cooking. And we talked about it at the time. I don't want to repeat myself a ton, but I understand why the unit's going away now. I'm happy that Junior's taking excursions so that he can come back and hopefully be a bigger deal. But when it's all said and done, I think they could have gotten even more out of M3K.
Yeah, and it's something where I wonder, because he's not going to, at least from what we know right now, have a super long excursion. We have an end date. It's a 3-month trip. Where do I think that it's the right, the quote unquote right thing to do to end up M3K and then he gets the fresh coat of paint? But the thing that really did it for me in 2023 was just the amount of physical charisma this kid has just confounds me, because I just keep on going back to Dangerous Gate, him coming out in his own gear, in his own look, and hitting the finger gun pose. I'm like, oh, this kid has it at a level that he should not have it at already. And it does make you wonder, do you really need to do away with M3K at this time when it is kind of the right thing to do? Because what do you do next for the other three guys?
No, we're in a real predicament here, but you're right. I mean, he's so advanced for where he's at in his career. Cage Match shows him at having 170 total matches, which for him to be under 200 and to be this good is just quite remarkable.
Yeah, the Dragongate logic, where we see someone who's approaching 2 years on the roster, we only see 170 matches case, and we go, seems a little light there. Seems like it's a little bit on the low end with that there, Ryoto. What's going on there?
Well, his dad probably worked 120 last year. It's insane.
it was something where, actually, just quick sidebar, going through whenever Brandon Thurston WrestleNomics releases like the most active wrestler like of the year, and special shout out Martin Kirby having a strong 2023, but it was always something I'm so used to seeing Masaki Mochizuki up there this time. But last year, the most active Dragon Gate guy was Madoka Kakuta, which was kind of a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, that's right. Because I mean, he was everywhere last year.
Yep. Well, speaking about old man Mochizuki, as a part of his 30th anniversary celebration, we had the reuniting of Mochizuki Dojo. Two of his more quarrelsome, I think we could say, students. He really, other than Yoshioka, he did not have a whole bunch of nice guys that it ended up being, or everyone ended up being a little bit of a bad guy. But we have Masaki Mochizuki teaming with Hyo and Kota Minoura versus Natural Vibes KZ, Big Boss Shimizu, and UT. Hyo, the Brave Gate champion, wins yet again with the Samson driver on UT. In a match that was nice to have, Case, but I think we could both pretty much say, leave the memories alone, Mochizuki Dojo.
Yeah, it was a disappointment. I don't know why they did it. I'm still trying to figure that out, but the match wasn't anything special. So it's one of those things that looks nice on paper, but I was let down by this. It was I thought if anything would deliver on the Saturday show would be this, but that didn't even turn out to be true.
And it is something where I feel like you have the easy pop there. Mochi comes out wearing Hyo's suspenders and has a golden rose in his mouth, and that was really all it needed to be, you know? Like, he could have turned back right around and we moved on, because the match just was not really there and just kind of out of context of everything. And, you know, it is something that's nice to see Mochizuki Dojo where it is and, like, revisiting it, because it is, as we get away from it, ending up being far more important than a lot of other units that have come by. But this was not the time or the place for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. You know, it's Mochizuki, Yoshioka, Minoura, Skywalker, Hyo, and Okuda. And so when you hit on everybody there but Okuda, that is a pretty amazing track record for a unit full of youngsters. They really nailed that. And I've always tried to figure out, and I've never been able to get it exactly, you know, obviously just working next to Masaki Mochizuki for an extended period of time, you'll become a better wrestler as a result. I would really love to know just how hands-on Mochizuki was in terms of their development. But again, Yoshioka, Minoura, Skywalker, Hyo, that is a really impressive lineup.
And you compare it to the other new generation unit we had over generation of its kind of same vintage, and it's the one that worked out, weirdly.
I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
Takahiro Yamamura, active wrestler.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that is happening. Well, we talked about him in process of this match. We do need to talk about him as he's walking into Yokohama, the hottest man in the promotion by far. Big hug, and the Brave Gate champion, Hyo. The shine's not coming. The bloom's not coming off the rose here. The shine is still on the Panther as we're going into Yokohama. Easily, like, the most popular guy in the company, and it's now sustained at this.
So I'm going to table most of my Hyo thoughts for the Brave Gate preview, because there's a larger point that I want to make with him and with that title. But I ask you the same question that I've asked before. Are you concerned that Hyo is outshining Luis Mante?
I think it's something where he's going to, like, and it's just like, I think that Luis Mante, as a part of the tag team and a part of the group, will be fine. I don't think that his Dream Gate title or, like, his position on the card is hurt by Hyo. It is just something that is just the matter of how the hand is dealt. Hyo is, by and large, like, the group leader, and I think that's the only kind of play forward. If we're keeping Big Hug the way it is, I mean, I don't know how you get out of this situation or play the cards any better than they did with Hyo joining his best friend.
He feels really hot right now, and I'll mention him again. Jesse Collins just had Alan Forel, friend of the show, on the Gentleman's Wrestling podcast, and they did 3 hours on the state of Japanese wrestling, primarily talking about a potential Yota Tsuji versus Kazuchika Okada Tokyo Dome main event in 2025, which became very, very funny 2 days later after that podcast was released and Okada announced he was leaving New Japan. But they talk a little bit about Dragongate and specifically Hyo and just the momentum that he has. And then I don't remember if it was Alan on the show or if it was Andrew, Anger216, in the Discord, who was comparing Hyo to Yoshino. I don't remember who said that, but it was an interesting thought experiment that Hyo is starting to sort of develop into this, fast as can be, super athletic. I won't say sneaky athletic, Jesse Collins. I apologize that I said sneaky athletic with Hyo, but super athletic, super fast, charismatic machine type of guy that fits into an archetype that has been absent for quite some time in this promotion.
Yeah, and it's something that I think that the overall existential question of how is this the Dragon Gate we used to love? Is this the X, Y, and Z? I think that that's an argument had by other people. I think
people that don't watch the promotion.
I was trying to be nice. I'm
annoyed by it for unrelated reasons.
But it is something where you can easily point to and you go like, oh, you remember how Yoshino was like? Hyo's in that role right now. And it is something that there is a familiar beat to it. And is it something where I think Hyo's going to have the career that Masato Yoshino had, like ending up being kind of the most popular man in the company for the greater part of half of the decade? I don't know. I don't think so. But it is something that with Luis Mante and with how they've kind of booked him, you kind of just want to just ride Hyo's friendship and big hug as long as you can. If you're thinking about like overness, like he is over in his own right, but you're standing like in the shadow of someone who is just right now operating on a different plane. And I think that you go with the hot hand. And I don't think you worry at this point about it.
Is the fair comp not Monster Express era Masato Yoshino, but all caps Italian collection Yoshino?
It's a different kind of charisma. Like, I think that I would probably say it reminds me a little bit more honestly of the Monster Express Yoshino.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, just because like Yoshino to me very much was like the cool, calm, and collected kind of thing. And does Hyo have that? Yes, but I always equate Yoshino up to a certain point as like kind of a taciturn kind of figure. Like when you think about Italian Connection, when you think about Yoshino, you're not thinking about him like joking around. You're thinking about a very severe, sexy Tarzan. And I just don't see the connection. Oh, I don't see as much of a connection. I'll say.
I think the dynamics with Big Hug are actually similar to Italian Connection, where you had Milano as this undoubted number one. But, one of the things that I really hammered home when I wrote about Yoshino before his retirement a few years ago was it's easy to lose sight of just how protected Yoshino was as a member of the Italian Connection. He was, Milano was such a star that he was the clear number one. But as time went on, Yoshino was less of a number two and more of a 1B. He never lost. He had that welterweight title for over a year and never lost it. Just lost it in the split between Toriyama and Dragongate. And really, I think that's what we're starting to see. The problem is that Mante, who was carrying himself like such a superstar and had all of this charisma, not only with the mask, but even when he returned and was maskless, he won a title that he didn't need to win, and it has sort of sucked some of the charisma out of him. So we have to deal with that. And so it's not quite Milano Yoshino as much as I'd like for it to be.
No, and I do think the Italian Connection 1B thing is very true in that regard. Like, I do think that it is something where, hey, Yoshino, the audience is just attached to him a lot. It felt like, at least in the moment, they got him immediately, where it did kind of feel a little bit that Milano, although very much the ace, number one, always position is that the audience, there was a little bit of aloofness there. Like, there was not the immediate like attachment. Like, he was a little bit distant I would say.
Yeah, I mean, go back and watch 2003 Toryumon. You know, Milano's the main eventer. He's wrestling the top guys for the title, but the theme of that promotion for a lot of the year is, hey, look at Yoshino move up the ranks. You know, look at him win the welterweight title. Look at him in Kness. Look at him in Dragon Kid. And I think that is very similar to what we're seeing with Hyo now, where the spotlight's going to be on Mante. He's going to wrestle your big heavyweights. And again, I'll talk about it more in just a minute when we get to Bayside. But there's potential to do something really special with this Brave Gate run, and I hope they capitalize on it.
No, I am totally with you on that. And I guess the last major Kobe Sumo Hall thing, both good and bad case, we need to have a serious talk about what Z-Brats is now. Because we have stuff where Z-Brats just all over the show, like just interfering like crazy. But at the same time, we have something like the main event of night 2, the 8-man tag team match, Road to Yokohama, final triangle skirmish with Natural Vibes, KZ, Big Boss, Shimizu, Strong Machine J, the Open the Triangle Gate challengers, teaming with UT going up against the Open the Triangle Gate champions, Kai, Ishin, Yoshiki Kato, and UT's opponent at Gate of Bayside, the Riki Dozen of Malta, Gianni Valletta. I think they might have figured out how to kind of do this Valletta character, or Valletta has figured out how to make it work here.
You ready to walk back some Valletta statements, Mike?
Am I going to walk it back all the way? No. Am I going to say that, hey, when you across 2 nights where you pretty much just go straight into it and you have someone who's just going to get right in the ring and do the match, it works out? Or in the main event where you have this feud that's essentially been going on for 2 years, Natural Vibes and Z-Brats, you add in the Valletta element. I mean, these are teams that have had all-out war matches with it. They should go and like get at it before hitting the ring. It worked out in that manner. And at the very least, I'll say in the main event, having Johnny Valletta play that kind of character added to it versus detracting and wasting our time like at Corcoran Hall.
I am ready to say I hope he has a second tour, because I think they are really close to figuring something out with him. Now, the problem with Valletta is that they've saddled him with UT on the Bayside show, and I don't think that's the right use of him. Now, I understand why they want to do it.
Well, it's with someone who's going to die.
It's with somebody who's going to die, and I get it. Big man, small man, you're going to have the big man squash him. I understand the dynamics of it. I understand why they're doing it. Again, like I said after the Corkin show, from a bullet point basis on paper, they've done everything right with him. I wouldn't change a thing. They clearly unlocked something in the main event of the second Kobe show where you have a Dragon Gate style multi-man match featuring Valletta as a brick wall. That is what I saw when I was not as hard on him as you were at Corcoran Hall. I saw the vision of why they wanted him in this promotion. Obviously, a favor was part of the reason why, but I saw the potential that he had there, and I'm so glad they had this match. I thought he was excellent. The only thing that I'm really knocking him on, because it's not the entrance is over with me. I am into the entrance. I am into him as a multi-man match wrestler. The only thing that I don't like is he kind of has, and I said this in the Discord, like sometimes shoot fighters come into wrestling and they don't know how to throw a worked punch. So all of their punches look really weak because they just pull back and pull back and pull back. He is doing the same thing. His offense, his strikes look really light. And it's not that I need him, breaking anybody's jaw, knocking anybody's teeth loose. But if he can find a way to make his offense look a little bit more snug, I'm game. I want to see what he can do against D Courage. I want to see what he can do against Ben K. I am ready to see him on a full-blown tour doing multi-man matches the entire tour. I really hope we get that at some point.
I am open after the main event to seeing what he can do for the remainder of his tour. I don't know if I want him back, because it is just something where it is so discordant to me. And it is something where you still have the issues where it worked here, but we'll see how it does at Gate of Bayside. I do agree that it is something that his role should be destroying people. because it is what he kind of does best. It is him as the brick wall, does work for him. But it is something where if you're going to have him lay it in, case, do we really want him to have it lay it in against UT? Like UT, his shoulder is held together at this point by twine and dreams.
No, I mean, I don't want him wrestling UT. I want him wrestling all of Vibes. I almost like, this is why Zebrats needs another guy. I wish it was Valletta and somebody against Daya and Tanaka. I'm way more interested in him actually doing the Dragongate cycle and the Dragongate house style than I am him doing squash matches. And again, I get it. I understand why they're doing it, especially if they have future plans for him. I assumed he was going home after Bayside, but maybe I'm wrong. But they've built him up as this monster, and I get it. But I'm now thinking that the other half of this, of him actually being a Godzilla-esque Dragongate wrestler, is very interesting.
And he's not the first Dragongate Godzilla kind of wrestler, stealing your phrase. It is not a completely, when I say discordant, it's not completely like out of the realm of possibility. I mean, we had Brody Lee work incredibly well in that kind of role, but it is something where as we see it kind of shined up, I'm totally with you. Like seeing him in the tag teams and seeing him being able to be in like the Atomicos like this and being able to kind of add that flavor is what I want to see. It is something though, whenever I'm after the match of Daiki Yanagiuchi and after just like the YouTube uploads where it's just like, oh, and he squashes someone and you're kind of left there going like, well, that was a waste of time. I just really hope they air more into what you're saying for the remainder of his time.
Quickly, before we get into the big preview, you mentioned to me off the air that you really liked Strong Machine J versus Kai. You have the floor on that match.
Yeah, I think I am just a sicko for fake heavyweight Dragongate wrestling lately. Because one thing that I think we could say over the last 6 months where we have our tastes differ is when during King of Gate and outside of that, when we got to have traditional heavyweight wrestling of Madoka Kakuta or Big Boss Shimizu, I really have gotten into it, and I liked how it was worked in this main event. It was something where both of these guys, Yokohama natives, building up Gate of Bayside and building up the Triangle Gate match. It was worked in a manner that I felt like that Strong Machine J looked really interesting in it. I think whenever they got out of their way with the amount of Z-Brat shit in this match, you had something that was very fun. And I think the Machine Clutch is a nice little pen that he should use more often.
I enjoyed the match up until the Z-Brats interference, and then that just killed it. I thought it was unnecessary. I thought Kai could have won in any, because Kai went over or Machine went over?
No, Machine.
He got the roll up. That's right.
Yeah,
I was thinking that's right, because after the interference, I was thinking Kai won with a Ganosuke clutch, but Machine won with with his own pin.
Yeah. It was, he was going for the Ganosuke clutch. He turned it into what looked like it was going to be Machine suplex, and instead he rolled him up.
Yeah, that's even more to my point. This is like an old TNA thing. Don't interfere and then have the interference mean nothing and the babyface still win. That's just silly at this point. I was into it until Z-Brats came in, and then it lost me. But I would say the first 11 minutes of the match I thought were very enjoyable.
Oh, absolutely so. So before we get into Gate of Bayside case, do we want to touch on Prime Zone real quick?
Yes, yeah, real quick.
So the return of Prime Zone Plus happened as we were recording today. I did not get a chance to watch this. I still have a piece I'm working on talking about Dragongate in Kobe City and how it relates to the company, but big return back to this show. You caught this and you were able to see it. It is something very important for the company to have shows like this where you get to feature the Dragongate young wrestlers doing different things. And we got a lot of that down the card, but I think we'll see a lot of that in the months to come out of Prime.
Yeah, so can you briefly, just because I was talking about this with somebody who went to the show, about just the turnover in the likely turnover in Dragongate audience from the last time they were at a Prime Zone show. And I would imagine that we have a ton of listeners who started watching Dragongate during the pandemic or beyond, and that maybe aren't fully in tune with what Prime Zone is. Can you briefly just explain the concept of it?
So Prime Zone is this evolution of a basically from about 2004 on. They as a Kobe based company, they moved to Kobe Sambo Hall relatively quickly in their history, but they would have a smaller room show each month around Kobe. Originally, this was Kobe Chicken George, which they filmed TV at, and there's a lot of early Torimon history happening at Kobe Chicken George. But as it turned into Dragongate, they started having these shows that were called DG Next, that were essentially rookie shows that were run out of a building in Kobe that still exists, but at that time was called the Sanctuary, and was where Dragongate by and large was based out of. And they would have this essentially small room studio wrestling show that they would be standing room only, 60 to 80 tickets there in that building or in that floor. And it would be a very much just a out of canon, which is a very important thing to say when we talk about Prime Zone. Nothing that happens in Prime Zone carries over to Dragongate proper shows. It is implicit that you go there to have a good time. And it's also something where in 2018, the company changeover happens. The reason why they were in the Sanctuary building was because the previous owner of Dragongate, Takashi Okamura, owns a whole bunch of karate dojos and owns that building. Right now, that building is full of his karate dojo stuff right now. But they were forced to find a new place to do this kind of show. Lapis Hall is a small theater in Kobe, and they started running these shows here in 2019, at least for that. Prime Zone started, however, a lot earlier as something else to do along with the Dragongate Next shows. So you have Dragongate Next, which are just straight rookie matches, and from people who would go, because Next very rarely makes tape, and when it makes tape, it's usually something to be celebrated. It has been described as people beating the crap out of each other, basically, like rookies going to war, and then you have this fun studio show that comes on right after it. Talking about turnover case, so they ran Lapis Hall as a taping venue in 2020 when they were behind closed doors, but they have not gone back to it since. So we're coming up on 4 years up until today without a show at Lapis Hall. And the thing about the Lapis Hall shows they're not evening shows, they're afternoon shows. And it's usually an older fan base that might be more of a lapsed Dragongate fan base that's more likely to go and have their time free in the middle of the afternoon on a Tuesday, basically, to go to those shows versus the crowds that you saw at Kobe Sambo Hall over the weekend. Did that clear anything up? Do you have any other things any questions you would ask that could kind of use to better fill in this history?
I'll note that. So I think Prime Zone was 2012 was when that kicked off, because it was definitely, it was Tozawa era Mad Blanky. So, part of the idea initially, and you're talking about dying days of Dragongate USA here, but the initial Prime Zones had English subtitles if you wanted them on, I think it was DragonGateStudio.com was where you'd watch them.
It was an online service that Dragongate had before anyone else did.
Yeah.
It was just Prime Zone.
And it was just Prime Zone, and Prime Zone had English subtitles. And I really, really wish they would bring that back for these, because a lot of Prime Zone is promos and angles, and it's bizarre. It's like a fever dream when you watch and you don't understand what's happening. It's a fever dream maybe if you even understand it. So, especially in sort of the golden era of Prime Zone, you see a lot of Dragongate related screen grabs still from just the absurdity that they used to dive into some of these characters. And I think that's their intent going forward as well. Very rarely do you have great matches. Super Shisa versus UT is the hallmark. We always talk about that. There's a lot of great Shisa matches throughout the years that have happened in Prime Zone.
Shisa versus Martin Kirby was incredible.
There's a Shisa versus Shingo, and I think a Shisa versus Tozawa, if I remember correctly, from one of the early ones, but those are also very good. So the new Prime Zone, the setup is very similar. It's familiar if you've seen it before. If you haven't, I would say it's worth your time just to understand what it is. Jay has some translations on his personal Twitter that I would recommend reading. The only match I would say worth checking out is the main event. They did Masquerade and Daya, who was wearing a mask, Jason Lee and Coach Minoura versus Natural Vibes, KZ, UT, and Yamato. That was a very good match. 3.5 stars, 3 3/4 stars. That was very good stuff. And it was really fun to see Masquerade back out there. But otherwise, it's a thing for hardcore Dragon Gate fans.
Yeah, and like when we say it's out of canon, bring up Masquerade is a perfect example. Kota Minoura is the new GM of Prime Zone Plus. It used to be Ryo Saito, and he decided that Masquerade was back. Jason Lee, everyone else had all their Masquerade gear. Jason Lee must have already sold his Masquerade pants.
Yeah, I did know that.
That's all I saw was, all right, they're doing this. Everyone else, like they had Tri Vanguard gear, and I saw the photos of the Tri Vanguard gear, and I was like, oh, that's cute. But Jason coming out in Natural Vibes pants.
Look, for Gate of Nostalgia, they better give Naruki Doi a heads up on what unit he's in, because nobody likes to sling gear quite like Naruki Doi.
He keeps it. He very rarely sells the gear. He only sold a couple pairs.
Oh,
recently.
You're right. Gamma's the one.
Gamma is the man that
he'd go from the venue straight to the store and sell off his body.
Exactly.
So it's a fun show. It's nothing is essential. If you're feeling pressed, if you're behind on the wrestling world, and you're a big Dragon Gate fan, don't feel like you need to carve out time for Prime Zone. But I think the file's like an hour and 15, and it's mostly promos. Again, the main event's sort of the only match that got any sort of substantial time. So I'm glad it's back. I look forward to seeing what happens, but it is bonus content for hardcore fans.
Yeah, it's true sicko hours. My favorite storyline from original Prime Zone was right after Yamato got his chef certificate and he started the Dragon Deli, which case we're still using that as a talk show idea if we ever get to that point. But and at that time, Monday Ryu just turned heel and was obsessed with salt attacks, and he was ruining Yamato's meals with a lot of salt, and then Yamato started a fight with him over it.
Yeah, it's called storytelling.
Yeah, it's called story.
This is what Tony Khan needs to learn about. More of that.
And it's something that Cody can learn to finish it.
Well done. All right, let's talk Gate of Bayside, Mike.
Gate of Bayside comes to us from Yokohama Budokan this Saturday, January 27th. It is a 3:00 local time JST start. That's 1 a.m. East Coast, 10 p.m. on the West Coast, 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. And just getting right into it as we start, I'm looking at how Jay has it set up on the Facebook, and he left off the Triangle Gate match. But it is a 9-match show, I believe, guys. Looking at it.
The Gaora website lists 8 matches.
All right, so
let's start with the main event. Let's start with Mante on Skywalker, and we'll figure out our way from there.
Yeah, I'm going to just go pull up the Gaora website thing, because it's missing out on the Triangle Gate match.
Well, while you're doing that, I reached out to somebody who I don't know if they're going to the show or if I just told them to look at the ticket sales for me. So tickets for the show seem to be moving okay. So there's 5 different categories of seat you can buy. There is special reserve seating. There is reserve seating. There is first floor reserve seating, second floor reserve seating A, and second floor reserve seating B. So second floor reserve seating A, those tickets are all sold out. And first floor reserved seat, there are only a few left. So you are looking at basically the premium of premium seats. Those are still available. And then the last tier of the reserve seats, those are also still available. But for not even having a walk-up factored in, the person I talked to was pretty bullish on the attendance for the show.
Yeah, and it's something it is nice to see with the fact that they've really based this around, okay, Yokohama, we've not really done the big Yokohama show, and it is something that is very appropriate. It was something that the Dragon Gate English Facebook page did not have, the fact that Ultimo was not on it.
Yeah, no, he took a booking in Mexico?
I mean, allegedly, man. Allegedly so. So looking at the show, Case, before we go down it, the official card still has Kaito Nagano on it, right?
Yeah. So that was announced this morning. Nagano's out. Genki Horiguchi is in.
Okay, so that has not been updated. So let's just, I guess, getting through the lighter side of the card, starting off then the opener, Courage, Madoka Kakuta, Dragon Daya, and Ryoya Tanaka versus Don Fuji, Ginki Horiguchi, and Daiki Yanaguchi.
This is a cursed match because they tried to do something similar at Final Gate and Daiki was pulled, and now they try to do something here at Bayside and Nagano was pulled. And again, I'm a little worried about his health right now. It doesn't seem like he's improving in the way that the company was hoping for. So just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, did we touch on Kaito's role at Prime Zone?
No, we did not. We did not talk about him. And was not Kato. Who's the other one?
So,
Minorita.
Yes, part of Prime Zone always is they have to have a backstage interviewer, and this started because Kotoka was a shoot interviewer, reporter for a local TV news station. Like when he was part-time wrestling, his real job was a TV reporter, and they incorporated that into it. But now the most recent version of it, the reporter role, was held originally by Kota Minoura. Now it is the names announced is Mino Rita, who is the backstage reporter, and John Kaito Nagano, who is our ringside reporter. Minorita has noted, like, hey guys, I know that I'm looking a little big right now. He did a tweet about that case.
Okay, yeah, we were body shaming Minorita privately. We weren't sure if he got plastic surgery on his face or why he was so puffy, but Minorita, no longer the boy we once knew. He has aged in the face.
Yeah, but he has time. It's good to see him back. It was good to see him back. But yeah, this opener cursed match. I do really think though that there is something with Daiki, and I think that Daiki teaming with Don Fuji is very funny to me, and I'm very much for that.
No, it should be a great opener. I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. Match 2, this is the UT versus Gianni Valletta singles match, where we're all just going to hope we get through this match without a message about him getting in.
That's the hope, because this can go horribly wrong, and it's not even anything to do with Valletta. It's just, it's UT in a singles match. You never know.
You never know. And after that, we have the Mochizuki Jr. comeback 8-man tag team match, M3K reuniting for one of their final nights. Masaki Mochizuki, Susumu Mochizuki, Yasushi Kanda, and Mochizuki Jr. They are going up against Gold Class's BB Hulk, and then the unaffiliated group of Takashi Yoshida, Dragon Kid, and Punch Tominaga.
That's a squad right there. I don't know what to make of this match, because they're making a big deal out of Junior being back, but it would seem very odd if Junior was going to pick up wins before he left for Europe. So I think you have to approach this from the idea that as long as BB Hulk isn't pinning Junior, which I just think would be a waste of time, I think we're looking at, what's not going to be a great match just based off the non-M3K guys, but a match that should be pretty fun. It'll be nice to see M3K back. I would just hope that it's, either, Father Mochizuki or Susumu or Kanda that are picking up the win here.
Yeah, because unless Mochizuki Jr. is pinning Hulk, like, he's not going to pin Dragon Kid. Like, Hulk would be the win there. I just don't see that making a whole lot of sense, as you're saying. Match 4, we have a Team Muscle, Kota Minoura, Benkei of Gold Class versus Yamato and Shuji Kondo.
Good stuff. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I like Gold Class. I've really started to like it just because they're tremendous idiots. And I do thoroughly believe in them. Since we did not talk about Benkei a lot on this episode, Benkei is the latest person announced to do British Kingdom Pro Wrestling, where it seems like that this is the faded family wrestling that Dragongate is doing in the UK. Shun's making people cry, but Case, I would put money down on this. Benkei will end up being the most popular guy that gets sent over there. Like, he's going to be killer with kids.
Absolutely. No, I mean, if you don't know Benkei and you see this guy walk out with a gold chain, sunglasses, and a banana, like, all right, you got my attention. I'd like to see what this is. Not to mention the fact that beyond that, there's still layers and layers of charisma there, and he is who he is as a wrestler. So I'm happy for Ben. I'm so down on the U.S. Indies in a different way than I was 3 or 4 years ago. Like when GCW was really hot, it sucked and it was actively bad. Now it's a I have no feeling. It's just a net neutral. None of it really matters. And I'm glad that Dragongate has seemed to warm up to the UK side of things. Not that the UK scene right now is anything special, but I do weirdly see Dragongate possibly faring better there than in America.
And I think it's something so, like, big picture, thinking about Junior going over there, being based out of British Kingdom Pro Wrestling. It is something where I think that in a lot of ways there's a more commonality with, from what my understanding of the shows being put on by British Kingdom Pro Wrestling, there's a lot more of a commonality with that than like Progress, with Dragongate. Like
no, I mean the real question is whether or not they'll work Rev Pro, because it doesn't seem like the type of thing that New Japan would really care about. And if they work Rev Pro, that's a real crowd with people that actually watch those shows, and those shows can make a difference. And I think that would be great for whether it's Junior, who's most likely, or Ben, or whoever. That'd be nice to see.
And Junior we already know he has a Germany booking, so that's the other advantage about working UK. It's easier to go do other wrestling scenes than if you're based in the United States. It's one of those things that could be an issue trying to get to work in Toronto if you're based in the United States, or if you're trying to work Mexico. Like we've heard the stories like with that kind of thing. It makes sense to base them out of the UK.
Absolutely.
As we move on to the championship portions of the show, match 5, Hyo defending the Open at Bravegate against Kagetora. Kagetora being booked pretty strong in the build-up on the Kobe Sambo Hall shows. Kagetora won the Royal Sambo on night 1, and then won the match with Big Hug, got the reverse the Samson driver in what I thought was a really fun match, teaming with Naruki Doi against Big Hug there. Hyo, any chance in your mind that Hyo loses this?
Oh, I hope not. I mean, I think that would be such a waste, because I think they have a really special opportunity with Hyo here. I was looking back at, basically the last 5 years of Bravegate champions, because lately, and I don't know when this started, maybe it's just been for the past year and a half or 2 years, it feels like we're in this constant state of Bravegate rehab. I think every champion has the same message that they're going to restore the value of the Bravegate title. And so I tried to go back in time and figure out when exactly that started. And I think it starts with the Dragon Dia reign right after he got unmasked, basically the start of D-Courage in 2022, because, Dia was so hot at that time. He had so much momentum. He feels like the last real big star to hold this title, not counting KZ, because KZ's reign was so short and impromptu and just weird. But I don't know if Dia fully stuck the landing on that Bravegate run. He was double champion. He wrestled twice on that Dead or Alive show. A lot of that reign was actually built around him wrestling Hyo. It's where he lost the belt at Kobe World that year. And it just didn't seem to have any impact. It didn't help Dragon Dia going forward. And so I think the blueprint you have to have if you're Hyo in this run is, oddly enough, and you hope that it doesn't end like this, but you hope that the spirit of the run is similar to that of when SB Kento was Bravegate champion, because Kento was a burgeoning star, felt like he had momentum. His matches felt like a big deal. He had the thing with Okuda and Osaka. He had the 2 Kamei matches. He had the UT match. He had the Problem Dragon match in Problem Dragon's hometown. All of those matches felt like individual specific big deals, and I think it raised Kento's profile. Hyo, I think, is more over and has more momentum than Kento did at that time, but now he has to follow that blueprint. The question I ask you, Mike, because you're the biggest Hyo fan on the planet, what is Hyo's signature match? What is the one that you can point to and go, this is the best work of his career?
I mean, there's always 12-1 2016, which is not really a fair one now that we really get to it. It might be the Bamashiri Brothers Collide. Like, that might be his current...
Was that the Kobe World match?
Yeah.
Yeah, you like that way more than I did.
Yeah, I do. I do. There was a thought that came over me during the Kobe Sambo matches case, do we think that there's any way that the company would be able to get Naruki Doi to job for the belt? Because I feel like that needs to happen after last week.
You know, it's funny you say that. That's not that's not where I was going with it. I had a whole. I was looking at the Bravegate champions. You know, the last time Doi was Bravegate champion was 2009.
Right? Yeah. And that was the double run.
Yeah, in my head he has like another reign or two, but it's really. Let me find out real quick. The last time that he would have wrestled for the Bravegate belt. I think there's logistical issues there. So yeah, 2013 is the last time he wrestled for the Bravegate belt.
So 2013, where like at that time was not a logistical thing. I just think that is the match that if you really want to solidify Hyo, you do that match. You say like, all right, Doi, I know that you're freelance, you're under an agreement here. We need you to do the job here. I think that would be the thing that would really set Hyo and the Bravegate apart.
Would you rather, if you're Dragongate, and I don't know if Mante is going to retain, but I'm going to use Skywalker as the example. Would you rather cash in your chips on Skywalker versus Doi for the Dream Gate, or Hyo versus Doi for the Bravegate?
My biases being well known, I go Hyo, because I don't think Skywalker gets anything out of beating Doi at this point.
Okay, interesting.
I think we are so far beyond Doi being a figure in that respect in this promotion. Like, all of us and the hardcores would be like, hell yeah, we're getting Naruki Doi versus Shun Skywalker at a Champion Gate or at Nostalgia Gate, whatever. But I think that what does Shun get after making that defense, other than, hey, he beat one of the big six, but it's the one that's not a roster member. So whereas if a Hyo beats Naruki Doi, then wow, you've just beat the first ever Open the Brave Gate champion, the first ever double champion. I think that's a major chip that matters a lot to Hyo that does not really figure into Shun. Shun's already made in that regard. He's past that level.
For sure. I mean, look, whatever it is, he needs to find his signature match in this Bravegate run. And you know, it sucks for him in the same way that it sucks for Kamei that Kento has gone out and has left the promotion, because, you know, I think you had two different sort of generational things lining up there, and now you can see neither of those to fruition. Yoshioka's not going to wrestle for the Bravegate belt. Skywalker's not going to wrestle for the Bravegate belt. Minora's not going to wrestle for the Bravegate belt. Hyo's the smallest guy of his generation. He doesn't have that generational rival to turn to. He weirdly doesn't have great chemistry with Dragon Dia, so that's not the answer. So Hyo needs to find that guy, and it might be Kagetora, because, you know, I thought they did great in Kobe as well, just like you did. Whatever it is, we need that match that, you know, can be pimped out to the lapsed Dragongate fan and go, hey, you know, he's the most over guy in the promotion, and this. And we don't really have the and this in terms of his legacy and his lineage in the promotion. So yeah. I'm very, very curious to see if he can do that with this Bravegate run. I think, and all respect due to Kagetora, who was just non-existent last year, January of 2024, he's turned it on. Good for him. It would be a colossal waste of time and energy and effort to strap him up here.
If Hyo wins this match, he moves solely into 6th place amongst Bravegate total defenses.
Really?
Yeah. Take a guess. Who are the two people he surpasses? He'll be tied. He's tied at 6 with 2 other people.
Genki Horiguchi.
Genki Horiguchi has 8 defenses. He is 5th on the list.
I'm hung up on whether or not Mori ever held the Bravegate belt.
He did only for a day, then he completely, and then he returned it.
Oh, okay. Maybe Tozawa. I don't know. Give me the answers.
Tozawa is one of them. The other one's Naoki Tanizaki.
I miss him. I would like to see Hyo versus Naoki Tanizaki.
I mean, there we go. Like, being in that level already of Bravegate champions, that is the Bravegate I remember, guys.
That's my Bravegate championship division. I apologize. I don't know if I said this on the air or not. I don't remember if I said this to Mike after we were done recording or if I said this on the air, but I had somebody drop me a note recently that Dove Pro did Tanizaki versus Okuda, and they built it as Brave Gate champion versus Brave Gate champion, and then Okuda was never brought back to Dove Pro, and they really highlighted that as just the fall of Keisuke Okuda. He can't even get bookings there anymore.
I saw someone bringing up like a Nokia IGF. It's like, hey, Okuda's around. He did it. And I'm like, I don't think that Katsuhiko Nakajima will be making a positive step forward for that group, bringing in Okuda as his backup. Like, no one's going to care.
You know what? Just for the sake of they're both assholes, I would love to see Nakajima versus Okuda, because that would end very poorly for Okuda.
I mean, gosh.
And that's not me saying I want to see him get kicked in the face. It's just Nakajima, he's just on a different level of being an asshole and a different level of politicking than Okuda is.
Yeah, it is something you just kind of stand back, Case. And you know what I say? What a worker.
Yeah, oh my God. One of the best.
Don't blame him. Like everything that's going on with this, I'm like, yeah, no, hey, that's the kind of heel you want to be. Makes sense to me. Not great for the company, but go ahead. Driving everyone out of All Japan. That works. Yeah, man, go ahead.
Very much so.
For the Twin Gate title, speaking about outsiders, we have from Pro Wrestling Noah, the Open, the Twin Gate champions, Kaito Kiyomiya, Galaxy View, and Alejandro defending against the Kung Fu Masters, Jason Lee and Jacky Funky.
I'm really excited for this. I thought Kiyomiya put forward one of the single best matches of his career at Final Gate. Now, granted, as I said then, I've never really been a Kiyomiya guy. That goes back to him being a young boy. But I thought he and Alejandro fit in great. And it's Kamei and Jason Lee. So I'm super, super excited for this.
Yeah, I think it is something where there's no one in this company who, when you put on the big stage and you say, go for it, that puts in performance like Jacky Funky Kamei. And now you are putting him in the ring with Kaito Kiyomiya, one of the biggest stars in Japan, I guess, technically. But,
I guess.
In theory, alleged. But it is something where this is kind of like, whereas we want to see the performance for Hio really just kind of setting himself apart, I feel like this is, you take the restrictor plate off and let's just go to town, boys, and let's see what we can get out of it.
I have a question for you that I don't mean this in a baity troll way, I promise.
Okay.
It's just a reflection of how we think of Kamei and Jason Lee as we watch every match of theirs that makes tape. And, I think the people that are tuned in and have a clue were, very, very high on Jason Lee for a number of years. And last year specifically really latched onto Kamei as being one of the best wrestlers in the world. How many wrestlers has Kiyomiya been in the ring with that are better than Kamei or peak Jason?
Man.
Because I started going down
I
the
know
Noah...
this isn't a big question, but boy, I'm like...
Well, it's like I started going down the Noah roster, and it's like, all right, Shiozaki, yes. Nakajima, yes. Kano, give or take. I love Kano. I think he's about on the level of a Kamei or a Jason Lee. Takashi Sugiura when he's on, yes. Okada, yes. Tanahashi, yes. Gene Blaster, yes. But once you get past that, you're looking at the core Noah roster, or you're looking at Muto, and it's just, I don't think Kiyomiya's been in the ring with people this talented for most of his career.
And I think that is something where you look at the state of this company, and it's no fault of his own. Like, he can't control the fact that this is the pro wrestling Noah that he loved, and this is what it ended up being when he got in there. Like, you can't blame the guy for that. Like, he doesn't have any control on when he was born. But
no.
It is something, though, that, he sadly, started wrestling pro wrestling Noah at the end of 2015, right before things got really squirrely, or while things got really squirrely for the company. So it makes it difficult to see, a lot of people have gone in and out of that promotion. Like, I'm right now looking just for grins at his 2016 matches. Rapid from Dotonbori Pro Wrestling making appearances and beating Kaito Kiyomiya at one point of his career.
Yeah, again, he's just, he's been saddled with top of the line Noah talent, which if it's Shiozaki, it's great. But if it's Maybach Taniguchi, or if it's even like Masaki Tamiya, it's like, all right, well, the core Dragongate guys they're just objectively better than that. And that's no hate. I love Kitamiya. I think he's great. But I think we're entering a really interesting point, depending on how long Kiyomiya decides to stay in Dragon Gate, because I would assume, and you could tell me if you think otherwise, but I would assume they're winning this and holding them until they can drop the belts to D'Courage and Yoshioka specifically. I don't know when he's going to come back. I'd like to see them play around with this roster a little bit, because if this match hits, I think it could hit in a really big way.
Yeah, and it is the thing that I don't think that Yoshioka is going to be out too much longer. Like that's the shame about the kind of injury he has. Like, other than his eye, everything about Yuki Yoshioka is perfectly fine right now. It's just waiting for everything with the detached retina to heal up with that. So given how Dragon Gate's springs are and how sleepy, frankly, the promotion usually is up until May 5th each year, why not have him play around and then you get to Nagoya and you drop the belt back to D'Courage there? Because I don't think that we're in a world where we're going to have a Steel Cage survival match at Dead or Alive, but I do think you could really do a strong main event, semi-main event by having Kaito Kiyomiya there against D'Courage.
And on the flip side of that, we mentioned Kiyomiya, but think about Alejandro, a guy who very clearly likes working in Dragon Gate, fits the style. If you didn't know any better, you would think he's like a homegrown guy. And he spent his career in Wrestle 1 in the Noah Juniors division. Now he's on a big stage with Jason Lee and Jacky Funky Kamei. This is a home run for him. I'm sure he's elated to be in this match.
Yeah, and it's something that I feel like more so than a lot of the Noah participation, that Alejandro, as you said, like, he loves Dragon Gate. Like, it is something where if the cards were played a little differently at one point, he might have been a Dragon Gate wrestler, and you could very easily see that with him.
Yeah, so I'm pumped for this. I really like the Final Gate match. I really like Kiyomiya specifically in that match. And although I don't see a title change here, I mean, this is one we could come back here next Tuesday and talk about how this was the match of the night, and it wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, this is the one where if you were going to have to pick one out of the 8 matches and say this is your work rate match of the night, you would pick the Twin Gate match. I feel like that is the easy kind of picking there. But we have the Battle of Yokohama in the semi-main event for the Open the Triangle Gate Championships. Zebrats Kai Isha and Yoshiki Kato defend against KZ, Big Boss Shimizu, and Strong Machine J. And Kai is threatening he has a surprise for Natural Vibes in base.
Can you figure out what this is? Because I'm a little bit at a loss here. I had a really out there prediction because I thought a certain wrestler was from Yokohama, but they're not. So I'm a little. I'll give my thoughts in just a second, but I'm kind of curious as to where you are on this.
Unless like you're doing the big bait and switch about Jack, and Jack is turning heel right after that match and joining Zebrats, I don't know.
I don't think it's that. I mean, maybe that would be.
Yeah, but like that's clearly me grasping at straws. Like, I don't know.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
It's just like that's the only thing that can come to mind.
In my head, Onita was from Yokohama. And I was like, I wonder if Kai brings out Onita and they do like a no DQ thing. And then I realized that he wasn't from there. So I was like, never mind. And then I felt like the most prominent wrestler of note from that area is Tajiri. And I was like, well, I in my head, it's like they're going to do something Yokohama related because they've built us up as the Battle of Yokohama. God, I hope Tajiri doesn't come out with Zebrats. That would really suck. I
don't think that, Tajiri's based in Kyushu now. Like, I don't know. I have no idea what's going to happen here.
No, it was so vague, and I have no idea what this is leading to. I mean, I would think it becomes a weapons match of some sort just because Kai's involved, but I don't know. I'm curious to see what this is. Do you have a preference on who you would like to see leave with the title?
At this point, no. to be honest. Like, I think that Z-Brats, like, you at least have a purpose for Kai's remaining heel at this point. If he's Triangle Gate champion, I don't think he has a purpose being in this group at much longer if he's not a champion or figuring his way into things. So I'm leaning Z-Brats for that. And I just get like this overwhelming feeling that there's going to finally be a turn in Natural Vibe soon. And I wonder if it's going to be this match doing it.
Yeah, this is a greater point to make here, but I'm really struggling with the idea of breaking up Z-Brats right now, because there's still so much change in this promotion and guys coming and going, mainly due to injury. It feels like, 1 month is drastically different than the next, but Z-Brats is this through line because they've largely remained very healthy and they've just been around in this era of Natural Vibes. I think I said Z-Brats just a second ago, but Natural Vibes has been so healthy for the most part, and they're just so familiar, and people hate change. And I think I would hate any change in Natural Vibes. I don't know what to do about it because they are so familiar and so comforting, even if they are arguably holding back Jack and Jason and Strong Machine J to some degree, and maybe even KZ. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with them. I do know that giving the Triangle Gate belts back to Natural Vibes here would accomplish nothing. I don't see the point in that. I think you need the Z-Brats run to go on a little bit longer, not for the sake of Kai, but let Kaito, just let him cook with this belt. Let him have this belt. Let him be the one picking up the pinfalls. Use this as a confidence builder and a resume builder for Yoshiki Kaito. And when they drop the belts, they drop the belts. But now is not the time.
Yeah, no, I totally co-sign that with you. And that leaves us with the Dream Gate Championship match, the main event for the first ever Gate of Bayside show. It's Luis Mante making his first defense of the Dream Gate champion against the man who made this all really happen, if we want to think about it that way, Shun Skywalker.
I feel very strongly that Shun Skywalker needs to win this match, and doing so would put Luis Mante in rarefied air. It would have him join Ryo Saito in 2006, Shingo Takagi in 2013, and Jimmy Susumu Yokosuka, Susumu Mochizuki in 2016 as being Dreamgate champions without a successful defense. But I maintain, I said it in the preview, I said it in the review of Final Gate, I think having Mante win the belt at Final Gate in a three-way match was a colossal mistake. Not that he doesn't deserve the belt, not that he shouldn't be Dreamgate champion. He should not have won the title in that three-way match, because you could only have him win the Dreamgate belt for the first time, one time. And they've done that. And by no means has he, failed as a champion. He hasn't really had a chance to prove himself as a champion. But I think even a month removed, it is just such a silly decision. And they should have had Skywalker with the belt. Mike, think about the way we would be discussing this match and the possibilities of it and the intrigue of it if it was Skywalker coming in as the champion wrestling Mante. Because then we could have the entire discussion about whether or not this is the time for Mante to win the belt, or whether it should be at Dead or Alive or at Kobe World or whenever. But they just gave it to us in this lame duck three-way that bombed at the gate, and it all feels so silly. And it's not one of those things that is going to send the company in a negative direction. I just think they missed out on a great potential growth moment. They don't benefit from Mante becoming champion at all because of the way they set it up. And we can talk about it in just a second once you give your opening thoughts. But I'm kind of the belief that Skywalker is just a way more interesting champion too.
Yeah, like the frustrating thing about this case is you've basically laid out the point I made back in December. And this was the big issue about that three-way match was you had such a runway. You had so many different stops you could make. You had the chase, essentially. You had this long possible storyline leading up to the year after getting turned on in the main event of Kobe World. He could have won the Dream Gate, had the ultimate crowning moment, and instead we had his big rival getting DQ'd intentionally, because knowing that he can get the match later, because Luis was going to want to still face him because Luis Mante is a valiant babyface. He's still going to want to get his hands on that despicable Shun Skywalker. And then it's just not really telling the story in the way that I think works out for anyone, any party involved here. I think that it's something where the easy thing is for them to put the belt back onto Shun and just hit reset, but I don't know if you're able to reset it now. You've already, as you said, Casey, you've already done that big Dream Gate title match, and you've kind of left yourself into a situation that, does Luis Mante take so much damage being a zero key champion potentially? That is a option we have to entertain, because I don't know necessarily, like, Luis Mante penning Shun Skywalker. That finishes the story. That finishes everything with it. Then it is restarting who's going to be the next challenger for him. It's not like anyone has been really built up in the offing, whereas last year we're like, okay, we know it's going to be Kakuta. Kakuta's coming. It's not like we have that. It's not like we have Shimizu coming. We're just left in like this big open question, I feel like.
If you were going to have Mante retain and assume that his next defense is at Champion Gate in Osaka, I mean, who even comes to mind? Who do you want to see there?
I don't really know. Like, you don't want to, like, if Yoshioka is back, you're not going to burn a Yoshioka match with that. You've already really solidified him, but you're not going to, I don't think you're going to go back to Kai for a title match there. There's just no one built up at this point. So you're going on people that have past records, or you can like justify real quickly. And I think that's like Yamato, Yoshioka, Benkei, Shimizu now, and Kai.
Yeah, it's funny you say Yoshioka, because that's the match to do in Osaka, because you have the King of Gate match there from 2 years ago.
That was incredible.
And we talked at this time last year, had Yoshioka retained in January about, they should do Diamante versus Yoshioka for the belt at Champion Gate. That's the match to do. But if Yoshioka comes back, you have to get the Twin Gate belts on him. So you can't even do that. You're in a rock and a hard place there. And to your point about the reset, I actually think you can. Skywalker should win this match for a few different reasons. One, we've had these great conversations over the last few weeks about where's the fire in Japan. Why are these guys not going out there and grabbing every show, every match, every moment by the throat? And Skywalker has that New Japan era Kenny Omega type deal, where Omega would wear the crazy pants when he wasn't working hard, the blue and pink pants, and then when he was going to be Kenny Omega, he would wear real gear basically. Skywalker more or less has that. There's effort Skywalker and there's not, but even the not is still so much better than the average wrestler. And then when he's on, he's the best wrestler in the promotion. He's the most charismatic. He's the most interesting in the promotion. And he's one of the best wrestlers in the world, and he's starting to very slowly. And I don't think this is anything significant, but he is developing somewhat of a global reach, a global portfolio. You put the belt back on him for that reason, but you also put the belt back on him to get Mante a real unit. Get member 3, get member 4, get member 5 in Big Hug. Let them figure it out. And let's not have Mante fall into the same trap that Ben K did where he won in 2019, because the build, you and I talked about it more than anybody else on the planet, the build to Ben winning the belt was perfect. And then he won the belt and we went, who is defense 1 going to be against? And then, it happened, and then we got, all right, I wonder what he's got going next month. There was no real flow to it, and he wasn't in a unit. It was just this uneasy alliance with Shun Skywalker. And Big Hug as branded, and Big Hug matters far more than Ben and Shun did as a tag team, but it was still 2 guys. And Yoshioka was in that boat as well. And it just, don't do this to your champion. Let your Dream Gate champion be in a big powerhouse unit. Shun has that built in right now. Mante does not. If you give it a few months, Mante can be in that same position, and I bet he'll be better off for it. You can totally reset here. You're right, it's awkward. I don't know if it's admitting defeat as much as it is making a smart decision. You know what? If you have to admit defeat and not let your ego get in the way of things to make a better long term, admit defeat. I have no problem with that. I hope that's the direction they go. I love Mante. I have zero reservations about him as a future top guy. I just don't think this time, meaning January, February, March of 2024, is that time. May, June, July, let's have that conversation. I think it's that close, but I don't think it's here yet.
And to piggyback off your point, because I think we both are of a like mind here, same opinion. Like, the best decision here is Shun taking the championship, becoming 3-time Open the Dream Gate champion. You could do it in a way where Mante is not taking that big step back. I mean, you've shown just so much of Z-Brats over the last month. Will it be satisfying? No, but will Mante be hurt by Shun cheating his way or getting the belt from nefarious means? No, I would say that then provides the fire to build him back up. That he's going to get his group of guys together, Case, as you're saying, that he's going to take it to Z-Brats. They're going to take everything from them, and then you build him up from there, like going after him and going after Shun Skywalker in such a way that you have him just completely dismantle Z-Brats and Shun Skywalker getting back the title and becoming 2-time champion. Like, there's ways to do this and getting out of this that, as you're saying, it puts you in a situation where you don't necessarily kick the can down the road, but you build up a better supporting cast and you set the scene and you let things breathe and play out. You have a scenario here where the schedule is not completely back to normal, but we do have Memorial Gate that just hand wave Memorial Gate. Memorial Gate is the 4th case, by the way. Memorial Gate.
Christ.
Yeah. Hand wave Memorial Gate. That doesn't matter. But you can do what you can. Then after Memorial Gate, you got Champion Gate, Nostalgia Gate at the end of February and into March. You got Dead or Alive, and hopefully they switch back so King of Gate is right there. And I think you can build it from there. I think that you can make a stronger Luis Mante and a stronger Big Hug and a stronger Dragongate by finding some way that you can get the belt off of him and onto Shun Skywalker that does not insult the fan base. If you do that, I think everyone's going to be okay for the bigger fight and then looking ahead to the summer.
I think my last point on this is, look, if you're worried about hurting Mante, whether it's his aura or his presence or his reputation by having him lose here, I think a lame duck long-term Dreamgate reign is far more detrimental. Yeah, again, this was 1 month, 0 defenses. You can get past this. This is no big deal. I'm really struggling to see the vision when the title win felt so off. I'm struggling to see how this turns around. I'm not seeing it. I'm not getting it. I would much rather them just push the restart button. Again, we're talking circle back to this in the summer. That's when I think he'll be ready. Now is not the time, though.
No, I am with you on that. And do you think, just since I threw it out there, do you think it hurts Mante by losing the belt by nefarious means here? Because I don't know if that's the case.
It doesn't hurt Mante. It might upset the fan base, but it doesn't hurt Mante specifically. No, I mean, look, I am all for an emphatic heel clean victory. I would love it if Shun just pinned him in the middle of the ring. That wouldn't bother me at all. I don't think that's what they'll do. I think there'll be some sort of interference if Shun wins, or probably even if Shun loses. But no, I don't. I worry more about the fans than Mante specifically on that.
That's fair. That's a fair point. And that is Gate of Bayside, Dragongate's debut show at Yokohama Budokan. Again, it is this Saturday at 3 p.m. local time, 1 a.m. on the East Coast, 10 p.m. on the West Coast. Case, you mentioned it up top, FSM 50. Can came out last week. Big thoughts at your big takeaways on the list. Interesting list that y'all put together this year. Shun Skywalker, I would probably put him higher than 43, but that's
well, there's
negotiations.
There's great political disinterest in ranking any Dragon Gate wrestlers at this point. So the fact that there's any on them is a big win. I'll make this quick because I know we're over on time here. But Dragon Gate specifically, the top 50 this year, the people that were ranked included Madoka Kakuta, Big Boss Shimizu, and Shun Skywalker in the top 50. If you're going to take a snapshot of the year, look, I think it's very silly not to have Kamei on the list. That's probably my big gripe for the top 50. Kamei and Yuki Yoshioka, who, again, I just thought was brilliant, but political factors making it very hard to rank Yuki Yoshioka on any wrestling list right now, at least with the people involved in SFM 50. But Skywalker was at 43, Shimizu at 28, and Kakuta at 14.
Yep, and that is up at voicesofwrestling.com. And Case, I think we are on our overtime. Do you have anything else you want to touch on before we got out of here?
I do not. We'll be back. I should have that Gate of Bayside review up Monday at voicesofwrestling.com. And Tuesday, we'll be bringing 2 podcasts to you next week. So look forward to that.
Yep, absolutely. And we will be back then to talk about Gate of Bayside and something really special for y'all, a part of Dragon Gate 25 and Rewind and Rewatch. But I'll be with y'all next week. But we will be back then talking Gate of Bayside and a whole lot more. Have a good week, everyone. Take care.
Music. It's not just part of our daily lives, it's part of our wrestling fandom as well, and it has been for decades. That's where this show comes in. Music of the Mat, the podcast devoted exclusively to the music of pro wrestling, hosted by Andrew Rich. Hey, that's me. Each episode delivers a different topic with a variety of great guests, fun conversations, musical analysis, and of course, a heartfelt pun or two. New episodes drop every other Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast app of choice. Check out Music of the Mat only on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.